Hi, I'm Jim Shaw from the Colonial Times and LexMedia. It's Monday, May 18th, and I'm here with Jim Malloy, Lexington Town Manager, for our Monday update. Welcome, Jim. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I thought today was kind of a big day in two senses of the word. The governor has announced some of his plans for reopening as promised on May 18th. And also today, for Lexingtonians, you're going to be talking today about the report from the Return to Work Task Force, which is scheduled to be announced today. So let's just go right into the Return to Work Task Force. That's the group of folks that you've assembled to sort of look at how local government will reopen. So let's start there. What are some of the things that you guys have sort of concluded, and some of the things you'll be doing as we move forward?
Yeah. So what we did is we created a Return to Work Task Force that's made up of one of our senior management team members from each one of our buildings, and a number of other employees, including we have a millennial working group, including some people from that group, to review best practices. There's a lot of documentation out there on the internet right now about what other governments are doing and what recommendations are from epidemiologists. And so they developed a report which is pretty detailed and incorporates a lot of, but not all of, the things required by the governor's standards that were released earlier today. But it also goes a little bit further. We are, a lot of the stuff like social distancing and wearing face coverings are the same in both. Having not full staff immediately and phasing in, bringing our staff back up to 100% is very consistent with what the governor's recommendation is or requirement is. In addition to what the governor's requiring, we're also looking at putting in plexiglass shields similar to what you see at a lot of grocery stores, because we have a lot of public interaction. And we're also looking at having temperature checks in our buildings so that we can tell if any of our employees have a higher than normal temperature. And we'll be establishing things like one way in, one way out, so that there's a flow of traffic through the building. We will continue, we'll continue to have a lot of remote meetings and discourage meetings with external groups. That if you can use a platform like Zoom, that we'll continue to use that. And then we're also developing a list of cleaning, like a cleaning checklist for the building. And this week we're looking at trying to make contact with an industrial hygienist and see if they could give us any additional recommendations on what we should be doing as far as keeping our building as safe as possible for our employees and for the public.
So let me ask you now, with the plan to bring some employees back, and I know you're going to continue the staggered schedule, you'll be, when will you be opening to the public? That's going to be on a different timeline, right? Well, I mean, you're going to want to get back, get settled, and then eventually slowly open. Have you made any decisions about when the doors will actually open for public service?
We haven't made any decision on that, but I would envision it would be a couple weeks after people are back in the office and working on a staggered schedule. And once we have some regularity here and we've we'll run through the cleaning of the building, we have all of the plexiglass shields installed, and we have to also certify that we're complying with the governor's order before we can open to the public. And so we'll have to go through all of that, make sure that what the governor's requirements are become really the minimum requirements. We have to make sure that we're meeting those minimum requirements before we open up to the public, or even before we have our employees come back in.
Now one of the things that we've sort of talked about offline was that, through this whole process, you've been able to find that to some degree, you've been able to meet, the standards that you really kind of set forth for serving the people in Lexington remotely, with people working remotely. And will there be some of that continuing on, once the office is open? Will you continue to have people working remotely where it makes sense?
We probably will. There's some real opportunities there for the town. We are really stretched pretty thin on office space in our building. What we could try to do is continue to have partial remote work and then have some space sharing areas of the building where employees wouldn't have their own desk, but they would share a desk. And one employee would work remotely for 3 days, 1 week, and then 2 days the following week. Let me turn that off, sorry.
Sure, oh, that's okay. Well, that makes sense.
And so that could save us potentially a lot of money in the long run for doing any kind of an expansion or renovation of this building.
Mm-hmm. Well, that does make a lot of sense. And to some degree, you know, many folks work remotely, but a lot of folks can't. You know, like a lot of the DPW activities that take place require DPW people to be present. So to some degree, there have been people, because you've got trash emptying, you have other things that need to be done. So that'll begin to sort of ramp up to a more normal schedule. Although I have to say, when I say a normal schedule, I think that the DPW has done an extraordinary job staying ahead of everything. So, and I'm not sure if they're working with a lower number of employees over there for the time being. I don't know if, like, some of the public safety departments were hit with exposure to the COVID virus. So at some point, I think Chief Core was saying that his department was down 25%, and not necessarily everybody having COVID, but being exposed and forced to quarantine. Yeah. So I assume the DPW was dealing with a bit of that as well.
We were, and we were also working them on a reduced schedule so that we had greater distance between employees and there weren't as many employees in the facility. And but at this point, we're bringing them mostly back as we gear up for a lot of the summertime work.
Right.
And we're just continuing to practice the requirements that the governor included for essential workplaces.
Great. Well, it sounds like we're heading in the right direction here in Lexington. And I know that you've been a part of the conversations. You know, you've been privy to a lot of the discussions as a town manager. I know the governor did today acknowledge the assistance of town managers from across the Commonwealth, during the development of his program, along with his advisory commission that he put together, chaired by Mike Keneally here of Lexington and the Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito. So it'd be probably a good time to sort of move in that direction. Let's talk a little bit about the governor's announcement, because it's been anticipated since he announced the day of May 18th. He put together this great commission of folks, and I know that they've spent a considerable amount of time, meeting and digesting and talking with folks from all aspects of the community, particularly the work world, the associated industries, the Massachusetts Retailers Association, lots of tourism organizations. I don't think anybody was really left out of the conversation from what I could see today during his press conference. But it looks like some things are he's announced today that some things can begin to function today. But the first real phase of his first, his what he calls the start, phase one of his plan, really takes effect on May 25th. And that will impact us. It impacts us today because of our houses of worship, obviously. But on May 25th, a lot of the businesses that he's talking about, hair grooming, pet grooming, things of that nature, we do have businesses like that in Lexington. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of those businesses will be allowed to open once they comply with, they have to self-certify to the Commonwealth and to the local Board of Health that they're complying with the requirements that are set out for whatever specific type of business it is. And so that will put some additional work on to local government, the Board of Health, to make sure that people have complied with that checklist. But I think the way that the governor has done this is in a very thoughtful way. And I know that he's not doing it as quickly as some people would like to see, but I think that there's reasoning and good sound science behind what they've decided. And so, I think for a lot of both companies and for organizations like the town or even churches, being able to comply with that checklist will be and having employees come back will be difficult to do within 1 week.
Right.
We can probably comply with most of the items on their checklist by next week, but we probably can't comply with the additional things that we sought to include in our return to work plan by next week. And so that'll be the toughest thing, is people will be scrambling over the next week.
All right. So in some of these businesses, like, like hair salons and barbershops, they're going to be set up by appointment only. But he also said, clearly, you talk about the certification, that none of these businesses can open until they are actually certified to open. And that has to happen before they open. And I imagine, and to some degree, that does go hand in hand with the Department of Public Health in Lexington, where they'll have to go and inspect and make sure that they're posting all of the right materials and such. Yep. And I know the governor, his office has put out it's available on our Town of Lexington website, sort of a whole list of things that need to be done. His whole plan for reopening is up there with some strict guidelines. But do you you don't see this? I know you're feeling the pressure as a town manager, and I know over the weekend the governor they protested at his home, and I know this is not you saying, this is me saying I was really disturbed by that. It's like you said. I mean, he's been very methodical, and he's been very committed to the health and welfare of this state and every one of the towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And he's doing a tough job. And like you as a town manager have a tough job. And I think, people have to keep that in mind, that this is a sort of a phase-in program. We have to take a hard look at it. We have to protect the people here in Lexington. I think everybody in the town of Lexington, everybody that you're working with, the public health department, everybody's doing an extraordinary job under these incredible circumstances. A lot of the things, when the weather gets better, recreation. I know that recreation is on the governor's list for May 25th openings. And how will that impact parks and things of that nature in Lexington?
Yeah, that's one of the areas where I think there will need to be some clarification, because there are some parks and recreation that can open on May 25th. There's some that are later in phase 2. And that needs to be clarified, because the statement that was issued and what's online isn't very clear as to what can be open and what can't be open. Right. I would assume that some recreational opportunities that you can maintain a safe social distance doing is probably what's going to be allowed to be open. But as far as basketball courts or football or any youth activities, that's all included in phase 2.
And those are activities where people are actually really bumping into one another. They're really up close and personal. So
yeah. And then the library is also can open, but it can only open for curbside or delivery, which isn't a service we provide right now, but curbside pickup.
Okay. What is it possible? Let's say you decide in Lexington, because I know you have a further obligation beyond what the state does to take a hard look at things. Like, I know that the town of Lexington closed hair salons and barbershops and other places, gymnasiums, prior to the governor's announcement. So I know that you guys are taking a hard look at what's good for the people in Lexington before you move forward. Is it possible if, that you might identify one park like Lincoln Street or something like that you can sort of watch and monitor and then say, okay, we're going to open slowly. We'll start with this park and then we'll open others. Or would you just open them all at the same time? And I'm not necessarily saying that'll all happen on the 25th.
Yeah. That's a good question. We haven't had that discussion.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts about where this is all going? I mean, I know the phase 1 actually really kicks in on the 25th, and then there's the whole bunch of things. Like, for instance, retail stores that's not included on May 25th. I believe it's included in the next phase, and with the next phase, it's some of these businesses are already doing things, dropping things off, allowing people to shop online, but the actual opening of stores is not going to be for some time. It's going to be at least a month or so, I would say, before that happens, because my understanding was that and I know he didn't marry this particular timeline, but he was talking about like every 3 weeks we'd get to the next phase. And of course, that a lot of that is data driven, as he said. So from May 25th, we'll look at something further down the road, and we're hoping on this day these things will happen. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot. But people need to understand that this is a slow open. This does not include restaurants. The restaurants will continue to run the way they are with sort of pickup and delivery. And so I'm not sure what date the restaurants are targeted. I didn't get to look at all of the information before I came on with you.
The restaurants are in phase 3.
Phase 3.
So that could be a month and a half to 2 months.
Okay.
But again, that depends on statistics and what trends are showing. It's very clear that if we see a vast increase in the number of people being testing positive, that it would claw back and go slower. Right.
And when the restaurants finally do open, there will be occupancy restrictions, I'm sure. I don't know what the figure is, but I'm sure there'll be some of that. So I think today, it was a long time getting here. And I think for some, it'll be somewhat disappointing because they really had in their mind that everything was going to be open and everything, be flowing like it normally did or has in the past. But this is a slow grow, and the governor's been very clear about this all the way through that, that he has to do this in a manner that makes sense for people and to protect the health and safety of the people here. So as frustrating as it can be, it's all for a good reason. So with that, if people want to find out more about where it all stands, and they can visit the Town of Lexington website?
Yes, we've got lots of information on the town's website, and the state has a very good COVID-19. Just go to mass.gov. There's a link right on the very top of the page in bright yellow that says COVID-19, and it takes you to a whole center that they've developed on their website that includes a dashboard, 40-page dashboard that you can just go through. It's a lot of charts and graphs and explains a lot and what the testing results are and what the state is looking at, the kind of data they're looking at.
And they update that every Wednesday, I understand?
They update it every day.
Oh, every day, okay.
Yeah, they're updating it every day now.
Okay, great. Well, that's all I have for today. I appreciate you taking the time. I wish you the best of luck as we sort of move in the direction of getting open again and serving the public. And I know it's going to be a lot of hard work, but we do appreciate everything you're doing to to serve our community. So, Jim, I want to thank you, for your work, and thanks for being with us today. And I'm sure we'll see you again next Monday.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.